Welcome everyone to Bringing Dolly Parton's Imagination Library to Every County. The webinar will begin shortly. We do invite for you to connect with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading on social media and throughout the webinar to share any thoughts you have using hashtag Learning Tuesdays. Before we begin, we would welcome all of you to introduce yourself in the chat box at the bottom of the screen. And we also encourage you to post any questions that you might have in the Q&A box, as we'll be dedicating some time towards the end of the webinar to respond. In addition, this webinar is being live streamed on Facebook. A link to the recording, as well as all resources in the chat box, will be compiled and shared in a follow-up email to everyone who registered. And finally, we'll be posting a brief on-screen evaluation during Q&A and highly encourage you to respond. Joining you now is Malai Amfar, Senior Consultant with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Thank you and enjoy the webinar.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Malai Amfar, and today we are going to be chatting around book provision programs. Book provision programs as a whole have very wide implications about the development of early literacy skills that are necessary for childhood success in kindergarten. We know that book access and having high quality books in the home are foundational, and this is one more element to support the learning that happens everywhere, and it definitely starts at home. Head Start has recently shared documentation about the linkage and deep connection between books in the home and reading with children as early as infancy towards more positive outcomes in early learning. Recently, we did chat with teams working with First Book in July's Crucible of Practice, and we have had representation from First Book in other sessions. We also recognize the major contributions that Scholastic has made in supporting book distribution programs by offering partnerships and access to providers. First Readers has also played a role within this landscape. I'll be putting some things in the chat soon, links to all of these resources that I've just mentioned. And I also want to note that following this webinar, as Sierra has said, we will send out a detailed summary with a resource guide connected to these mentioned book provision programs and others such as Jumpstart's Read for the Record event. Sierra, when you are ready, if we could bring up the slide which shows all of our panelists, we are going to be hearing about another important program and highly regarded program under the umbrella of book distribution. Our session is the story of how the Department of Education within West Virginia collaborated with key partners to bring Dolly Parton's Imagination Library to every child under the age of 5 in the state. And we'll begin our conversation with Kelly Griffith, who is the state coordinator for West Virginia's Department of Education. Sierra, if you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. And in the chat, I've also linked biographies for all of our panelists, and I would feel free to download that and read it on your own time. All right, with that, I would like to pitch it over to Kelly. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, if you can go ahead and put it on the next slide, thank you. Okay, so first of all, I just want to say thank you for the warm welcome and allowing our team to share out today some of our work, not only about the campaign, but also the Imagination Library here in West Virginia. We appreciate this time so much. If you'll go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So here in West Virginia, the campaign is a little unique. And to tell our story, we thought it would probably be most appropriate if we give you a little background information and share with you how we've grown the program to tell about our story here in West Virginia with the Imagination Library. We have a very strong partnership, the Department of Ed does, with the June Harless Center, located at one of our universities here, Marshall University in the state. We've been partnered with them for probably about 7 or 8 years with a really intentional and primary focus on the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. However, it was about 2 years ago, our superintendent at that time, he designated our team and partners at June Harless as the Early Learning Technical Assistance Center for our state. And we call them the LTAC. That's just a little easier to say because that's a mouthful. But that was really exciting news for us, but it also expanded our work in a very large way. So at the LTAC Center, we have specialists that work for us, and they really do help build that capacity that we're going to talk about with not only the campaign, but a lot of other initiatives that we do with our work. So they're actually serving as extensions of the Department of Education in the early and elementary service areas. And we work really closely with them with all of the efforts to make sure they're aligned with not only our current initiatives with the department, but also our strategic plan and the Board of Education's strategic plan. Okay, if you'll go ahead to the next slide, please. And this slide is, I just wanted to give you a visual to kind of see our big rocks, if you will, of what our work looks like. We spend a lot of time and effort on these big rocks. And of course, the first one is the campaign for grade level reading. And as I mentioned earlier, West Virginia is unique because with the campaign, because we have partners in all 55 counties of our state. This is where our partnership has been absolutely critical with the June Harless Center, because it truly builds our capacity to where we're reaching all 55 counties with the campaign. We now have 6 early learning specialists that are assigned to about 8 or 9 counties apiece. And each county has what we call a county lead and a county team. And our specialists have they've been able to build those relationships with them to help support the work for the campaign. Each year, the specialist from the LTAC provides new county lead trainings because, you know, we do have turnover within the school systems. We might have a new lead or we might have new people on the team that year. So we provide that training each year to share out anything about the campaign, any new information. We also support the counties throughout the year with trainings and professional learnings and development around the components of the campaign. We also review county action plans, provide resources. We help analyze county data, help implement initiatives to support the campaign, especially with the pillars of attendance, school readiness, high quality instruction, and extended learning. We also embed that family engagement piece throughout all the work. We hold 2 big meetings, usually a beginning of the year meeting and middle of the year meeting, and then a technical assistant meeting with all 55 counties every year to help support the campaign. These really do help drive those action plans and data discussion for their goals for the next year. Another big rock, of course, is professional learning that our team does. I think last year it was over 100 presentations that we held for different school districts, counties, staff, educators. Our reach was nearly 4,000 educators and within all 55 counties. We provide, well, within those numbers though, I would like to say they are educators from pre-K through 5, but also special educators, interventionists, instructional support specialists, assistant principals, principals, superintendents, instructional aides, academic coaches, parents and families are involved in some of those. So we do have a big reach with our professional learning. And although we do have a large menu of service that we do for professional learning, I wanted to also touch on, since we got the designation of the expansion for the LTAC, it did expand our work. So we used to be pre-K through 3rd grade for literacy only with the campaign, but now we are pre-K through 5. So that's why you see that button up there. And the expansion of our work is not only literacy anymore, but it is with a focus of literacy, but also numeracy and the integration of content. So we're really excited about that. And then also our last big rock up there has been the Dolly Parton Imagination Library here in West Virginia. We, as part of our school readiness, that's been one of our big initiatives in our state. And we have grown this initiative into a statewide program that covers all 55 counties in West Virginia. And recently, this past summer, we've grown to the point that we actually needed to support this growth by hiring a dedicated program developer just for the program in our state, and which you'll learn more about that today in just a little bit. Okay, next slide, please. And this slide, we always use it during our professional learning when we go out on the road. And it's just something that I really like to share with our people. And I think it tells a message of our work. The vision of our LTAC is just to make sure that all of the communities in West Virginia feel prepared to meet the needs of their students and their children. And this goes back to the high quality instruction piece for the campaign. And we know that when teachers or educators or parents even feel, prepared with best practices and things that will help their students and their children, that they're the ones that reap the benefits. So this has been a huge part of our role at the LTAC and providing the support to districts and counties, school and staff, and even families. And it's our mission to just absolutely be that platform, that place where educators can go and elevate their practices and grow professionally as they support those students in the PK through 5 in our state. And we do this because we do truly believe that it impacts our students. And we know that when schools and communities are well prepared to deliver best practices and high quality instruction, that it impacts the students, but the outcome is different. So it helps our students be better prepared for their future and their future throughout their school years, graduation, prepare for college or a career, or to be an active citizen. And we do this, and I explain this when I always say, it's like the North Star. Educators in the field, I taught for 17 years, and I was a first grade teacher, and I felt like I was in the trenches, and it was really hard to always know best practices, to take the time to do the research myself. So, the LTAC really serves as that North Star now. With educators just being in the trenches and working tirelessly, they don't have the time to do the research or to inquire about the latest or best practices. But here at the LTAC, that work's done for them. Our team consistently does the research, are always learning to provide that latest research or best practice and that information to the field. So it really does help districts and counties and educators as a guide, as a North Star, if you will, to help them navigate through things that are changing in education and best practices and be up to date with those types of things. Next slide, please. All right, so this will just give you a little glimpse of the Campaign for Grade Level Reading from then till now. So in 2015, West Virginia Public Ed put into place Policy 2512, and that was our transformative system of support policy for early literacy. This is a comprehensive approach, and it serves as our blueprint for the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. As you can see on the screen, we've grown from 5 specialists, like I said, to 6 specialists. We're still in all 55 counties. It is a formula funded allocation, the early literacy fund. So depending on the enrollment of the county, that's how their funding is based. So each county is different, just depending on their enrollment the year prior to. Then in 2015, some counties were active in Dolly Parton Imagination Library. It did not become statewide until recently. And the difference, I guess, one big difference is we've grown with our number of specialists, but we also have a designated, devoted person for program developer for Imagination Library, since it is statewide. And we still have a huge focus on the campaign with extended learning, attendance, school readiness, and high quality instruction. So next slide, please. And that might be my last slide. Is it? Yes. So I'm going to turn this over to my colleague, Dr. Tara Beth Heineman, to share about the history of Dolly Parton Imagination Library in West Virginia.
So I just wanted to say, thank you all so much for having us. We're excited to share our story in West Virginia. My name is Tara Beth Heineman. I'm the Executive Director for the June Harless Center, and we have such a close partnership with the West Virginia Department of Education, and especially Kelly from the office there. And so my job is just to share a little bit of our timeline in West Virginia, our history, and really it should be called a journey, because you're going to see that we started in 2007 in some capacity, and years later here we are launching statewide. So I think it's important, and Kelly probably mentioned this, to get a scope of our work, is that West Virginia is divided into 55 counties. So when I say we started in 2007 with Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, with launching in 13 counties of the 55. And we launched in 13 ARC counties, and I'll explain what that is in a minute, by using lottery interest funds and ARC funds. And then later in that initial year, we were able to expand to 24 counties. So still less than half. If you're not familiar, ARC is the Appalachian Regional Commission. And really, they're an economic development partnership agency out of the federal government. So this includes 13 states and over 400 counties that are included in this ARC region. And they really are looking to invest in and build community capacity and strengthen Appalachia. So when I say 13 ARC counties, these were 13 designated counties in our state where we launched in 2007. 5 years later, you can see that some of those lottery interest funds were depleted, and the program and the operations were scaled back to those original 13 counties. Then a few years later, 3 years later, the West Virginia Department of Education and the Arts allocated $350,000 towards Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. And this really allowed for the onboarding of counties who were cut in 2012. This is kind of where the June Harless Center starts becoming more involved in 2016. The West Virginia Leaders of Literacy Campaign for Grade Level Reading grant allowed more counties to join and use campaign funds to do that. And when Kelly talked about the Campaign for Grade Level Reading in West Virginia, that was our initial partnership with the West Virginia Department of Education. Next slide. So from 2016 to 2019, the oversight of the Dolly Parton's Imagination Library shifted to West Virginia's Department of Education's Early and Elementary Learning Services. And so that's when our partnership was solidified. And our goal together was to really expand Dolly Parton's Imagination Library in West Virginia. So within a year, in 2020, all 55 counties were participating in the program at some capacity. That meant that, in certain counties, it was the whole county that was participating or eligible. In some counties, it was certain zip codes. So we didn't have full capacity or full statewide launch until just recently in 2021. And so this was an amazing accomplishment for us. The growth really expanded within a few years, and now we are able to offer this program to any eligible child under the age of 5. So full participation is made possible by local and statewide funding efforts, and that's something that we'll talk a little bit more about. Next slide. So something we wanted to share, and I think they'll pull up the video for us, is that when we were able to launch statewide, Dolly Parton sent us a video to celebrate that launch. And it really talks about the partnership that's been developed between the June Harless Center and the West Virginia Department of Education and our former state superintendent who was there at the time, Mr. Clayton Birch. So what's important is that this video not only celebrates the good work that's happened, but also it shares stories of how this program is impacting families here in West Virginia. So I would like to share that now.
Well, hello, West Virginia. I am thrilled to share that every child from 0 to 5 in West Virginia is now eligible to register for my Imagination Library. Now, I know it takes a lot of great people to make this possible, and I personally want to thank Governor and First Lady Justice, the West Virginia Department of Education, and the June Harless Center for their support. Let's celebrate by getting out there and registering children and families to receive this wonderful gift of a book in the mail every month. Together, we can inspire children to dream more, learn more, care more, and be more. Thank you, West Virginia.
Hello, I'm Clayton Birch, State Superintendent of Schools. Here in West Virginia, we have a long history and tradition of supporting our youngest learners with nationally recognized early childhood programs. With the Imagination Library, we continue to increase those efforts. I'm so proud that West Virginia is launching the Imagination Library statewide to every single child. It will put books in the homes of all of our children and give them the best starts possible. And I want to thank Dolly Parton for this opportunity, the inspiration to provide and open the world up to these children with books in each and every home.
The Imagination Library is super special to us. Not only do we love books as a family, we also love getting mail and we love surprises. So it's kind of all those things wrapped into one. I don't know who's more excited about the book when we receive it each month, her or me. But it's really special to us. I love that it's age appropriate, and yeah, I just love the variety, and it's so exciting that it's a surprise each month.
We like sit in Mama's lap and we snuggle up and she reads us stories.
It's prompted us to not only read the story, but also take that into some imaginative play. We've created forts under the dining room table, and we've visited truck stops, and we've gone on many adventures that were started simply with a book.
We especially love that some of the selections are bilingual. We hope she will be bilingual. She does have Hispanic heritage, so that is extra special that it's curated in that way as well. We love getting the Spanish books too.
I like twists in stories. And I like the silly endings and stuff. And I also really like being able to sit with Mommy and read before bedtime.
You know it's a really loved book when it's gnawed upon, because Bailey Puss likes to read her books and also eat her books. Yep, you do. So that's always a sign, and I can assure you that a lot of the Imagination Library selections have a lot of bite marks. So it's 5 stars.
So I'm smiling, and I hope you all are smiling too. Every time I watch that video, it just makes me so happy to hear from the families who are being impacted by this program every day. And the fact that we could offer the opportunity to our families is something really special that we've been able to do through this partnership. So I'm going to turn it over, and you can move to the next slide to my colleague, Brittany.
Thank you, Tara Beth. And as she said, my name is Brittany Fike. I am one of the early and elementary learning specialists that Kelly mentioned works at the Technical Assistance Center here at the June Harless Center. And so I'm going to talk with you a little bit more about Dolly Parton's Imagination Library program. In case you're not familiar with the program, I'll talk through a little bit about what it does and some of the impacts of the program and some of the things we do with it here in our state. So Dolly Parton's Imagination Library program is a book gifting program that mails free, high quality books to children from birth to age 5. And this happens no matter the family's income. Anyone is eligible to register for the program. And so once a child registers with us for the program, they are then mailed one book each month until they graduate from the program on their 5th birthday. So the Imagination Library books are specially selected, age-appropriate, high-quality titles that are actually chosen by a selection committee of early childhood literacy experts after reviewing multiple titles. All of the books are published by Penguin Random Publishing House, and so they review all titles from that publisher. Each book is sent to the child, personalized with their name on it, and mailed directly to their home. So they get really excited about receiving a piece of mail that's addressed directly to them. And this effort really creates a gifting experience that really makes them excited about reading and lets them know that someone is thinking about them. The children that are enrolled in the program are separated into 6 different age groups, and each age group receives books that contain certain characteristics that are specific to that age group's appropriate level. So for example, children in group 1, which is the youngest group of children, that consists of newborns and then children under the age of 1, receive books that are bright and colorful, they're simple, they have less words, and they often have board pages so that they're more durable. The first book that every child receives is a customized version of The Little Engine That Could that has a message from Dolly on the inside cover that welcomes children to the program. And then the last book that every child receives in the month of their 5th birthday is Look Out Kindergarten, Here I Come. It's also a customized version that has a note explaining that they've graduated from the program and wishing them the best of luck as they enter school in their kindergarten year. Next slide, please. Next, I'll talk a little bit about the impacts that this program has had. Recent studies suggest that by participating in the Imagination Library program, there's really positive and significant impacts associated with higher measures of early language and math development. We know that simply having books in the home benefits early literacy skills such as print motivation, children just being interested in reading and learning to love books, and other things like phonemic awareness, letter knowledge, vocabulary, and exposure to print and language development, all of which are super important pieces for school readiness, which is really how this program fits into the campaign for grade level reading. The program really allows us to kind of level the playing ground for our families by providing books at home. We know that we're giving our parents the opportunity to engage in reading with their children or sharing a picture book that they may have otherwise not have had the opportunity to do so. Having books in the comfort of your home is really convenient, and being able to actually touch and feel and open and see the print and pictures of the book is truly a benefit to early learning. And so when looking at the program and its impacts, it really is safe to say that it's fairly unique, not only because of the impacts that are listed here on the screen, but it really has the potential to bring communities together. And we've seen this here in West Virginia. The program includes all children from birth to age 5. So it provides that common ground, as I mentioned, as children are entering kindergarten. If they've participated in the program, that's something that they have in common with their peers. It promotes activities that have a healing effect on families regardless of their economic status and gives them all the same opportunity to build their home libraries. And then it really also engages the entire community in promoting literacy, awareness, enrollment, and fundraising, and allows each of our 55 counties to grow and sustain the program while also benefiting from the statewide and local partnerships that we have with them. On the next slide, you'll see the logic model from Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. And the Dollywood Foundation is really committed to supporting local imagination library programs in communities like ours by focusing their work and identifying common outcomes for all of the programs. And so this really helps to ensure that everyone is on the same page and providing the best possible program opportunities for children and their families. And so these research-based outcomes that you see here were identified through reviews of literature and are really considered to be the building blocks for lifelong literacy supported by research that are aligned with the Imagination Library's philosophy and their goals. So there have been over 40 different independent studies that have shown how the program has had a significant and positive impact on family literacy habits, school readiness, and third grade reading achievement level. And so if you look at some of that research and some of the surveys that have been sent to families participating in the program, you'll find that these families have reported that their children gain a love of reading and that they're also better prepared for kindergarten because of the program. Some parents have noticed that their children have learned new words and new vocabulary because of exposure to the books. And it was also reported that families really appreciate the uniqueness and variety of diversity among the books. And last but not least, those survey results also showed that in areas with high rates of poverty, that they have an even greater impact in those areas where books are sent to families. So we have a video we would like to share with you next. This video is from Jessica McCormick, and you heard a little bit from her just a few minutes ago in the last video we watched. She planned to join us today, but she is actually has been called for jury duty. So she was kind enough to send us a video to share with you. And she's just going to talk a little bit about how Dolly Parton's Imagination Library program has directly impacted her family.
Great, thanks, Brittany, and everyone. I had meant to make that program note around Jess, and so we're excited to see her through video. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jessica McCormick. I have 2 children under the age of 10, and both of my children have been fortunate enough to participate in Dolly Parton's Imagination Library basically since birth. My youngest is nearing his 5th birthday, so we are soon expecting his Welcome to Kindergarten book, which will close out this chapter in our lives. It's so bittersweet. We have participated in the programs through the Cabell County Public Library and most recently the June Harless Center at Marshall University. The program impacts to our family are immeasurable. My children have learned so many different lessons about life and about love, and we've bonded each night by cuddling in bed and choosing one of our favorite books or selecting a new book that we just received. We've found our favorite authors and illustrators, and then had the opportunity to go out and buy more of our favorite author and illustrators' books. We've learned Spanish together. We've created adventures to mimic the books that we've received. The gifts we have received from this program may look like a book to some, but to our family and so many others, it's a whole lot more than that. And for that gift, I'll be forever grateful. Thank you so much.
So Jessica's story is one of many that we like to share when we talk about the program, because we know how positive of an impact it's having here in our state. And so we're happy we got to share that with you. On the next slide, you're going to see a picture of a family engagement newsletter. And so while I mentioned that we know that simply having books in the home is a benefit to our students, We also want to work to engage with our families beyond just receiving that book. And so that's something that we're really proud of that we do here in West Virginia. When families register for the Imagination Library program, they're asked to provide an email address. It's not required, but we do encourage them to do so, because by providing that email address, they will automatically start to receive a family newsletter that we create each month. And inside the family newsletter, we'll share important updates about the program. We'll share the list of books that the groups are receiving that month, so they'll know what title to be expecting. And then for each book that goes out, we also create a book activity sheet. And so for the books that the family is receiving that month, they can click on an image of the front cover of the book, and they'll be taken to an activity sheet that includes general reading tips, but also more specific activities that discuss things they can do at home with their child in regards to the book they received. The activities that are shared are often activities that require little to no materials. And if they do require materials, it's things that can commonly be found in the house or can be found outside in nature. And so we really encourage our families to use the books beyond just reading, and we are excited that we're able to provide them with experiences that allow them to engage in different things together. We also provide phone and email support. So we have an email address and phone number where families can reach us if they have questions about the books they receive or need to update any of their account information, such as their address or phone number or things like that. So now, as we move on to the next slide, my colleague Alicia is going to speak with you about the structure of the program and fundraising efforts.
Thank you, Brittany. My name is Alicia Siner, and I am the new program developer for Dolly Parton's Imagination Library in West Virginia. So it's a pleasure to speak with you today. And we can get the structure of the program in West Virginia slide up. Here we go. So as you've heard the history of the program in West Virginia, the structure is a little bit different in our state. It's a three-way partnership among the Dollywood Foundation, the West Virginia Department of Education, and the June Harless Center and local affiliates in participating counties. West Virginia is one of 15 statewide programs, and Imagination Library is reaching 1 in every 10 children in the U.S., which is amazing. If you are interested in implementing a statewide program, the first step is to find a state leader to champion the program. This person will advocate to get the program written into legislation. The second step is for your state to commit to funding at least 50% of the anticipated cost. And then the final step is to select a nonprofit that will oversee and focus 100% on Imagination Library. Next slide, please. The June Harless Center serves as the fundraising arm for Imagination Library. My job as the program developer is to fundraise, secure partnerships, manage invoicing and funding structures, and develop fundraising resources that can be shared with our county affiliates. Our county affiliates promote the program locally and help enroll children. All overhead and administrative costs are covered by the Dollywood Foundation. They provide our book ordering system, book selection, pricing, and distribution. Next slide, please. I wanted to share this visual with you. It shows a detailed breakdown of each organization's role in promoting and funding the program. So just so that you can kind of see the breakdown of what each entity is responsible for. Next slide, please. So the June Harless Center works closely with community partners to promote awareness, enroll children, and fundraise for the program. Hospitals, WIC offices, family resource networks, libraries, and other partners do a terrific job in spreading awareness and registering children. Other partners, such as county school systems, insurance agencies, banks, individuals, and other civic groups help to fund the program. Some of our current partnerships, as you will see on the slide, include the Rotary District, Encova, Huntington Bank, United Way, public libraries. etc. And all of these are wonderful partners to the program in West Virginia. Next slide, please. So we find the greatest success in spreading awareness of the Imagination Library program is to build awareness in our community through attending events, hanging flyers, posters, etc. Brittany and I help promote the program awareness through community events, fundraisers, and speaking engagements. Just last week, we attended the West Virginia Library Association Conference and presented a session on Dolly Parton's Imagination Library in West Virginia. Additionally, the June Harless Center team continually advocates for Imagination Library during school readiness initiatives. The West Virginia Department of Education shares an Imagination Library story or post every Thursday through their social media outlets. The June Harless Center also has a Facebook page where they post Imagination Library updates. And in addition to Brittany's family newsletter, I send out a partner newsletter monthly that includes just a bright spot that could be spotlighting a partner or something that we have done that month to bring in funds, a fundraising tip for communities to take back to their counties and try to raise funds, and then a link to the family newsletter that Brittany provides, which has the book activity sheets. And then it also includes the most recent participant data in each county. Next slide, please. While the books are free to the families, it does cost approximately $2.10 per child per month to mail and distribute the books. So fundraising is a great way to offset these expenses and ensure continued program growth. The June Harless Center leveraged Dolly's visit earlier this year to raise funds to support the program. Once a state reaches that statewide participation, Dolly will come and celebrate with you. So we took advantage of her being here with us in Charleston. I worked to create sponsorship levels, held a silent auction, and then worked closely with the Marshall University Foundation to establish a crowdfunding page. The graphics team at the West Virginia Department of Education designed a business card with our contact information and a QR code that linked to the crowdfunding page. We brought in a little over $42,000 in sponsorships, about $3,000 from the silent auction, and then a little over $4,000 through the crowdfunding page. So overall, just a little over $50,000 for that one event, which is just fantastic because all of that money goes to help get books into the hands of our children. Other fundraisers that we have planned are a Giving Tuesday social media campaign, selling Little Caesars pizza kits, and then a Dolly Dash / Kids Fun Run every August 9th. I also hope to partner with local businesses in each county to assist with fundraising efforts every August 9th. Next slide, please. I just saw the question pop up, how was Dolly? Well, Dolly was amazing. She sang about 3 songs. She did a fireside chat with our Marshall University president, Brad Smith. And she was just genuine and sweet. And we were all on a Dolly high for like the whole next month. She's just amazing. So like I said, it was called An Evening with Dolly. It was held on August 9th, and Governor Jim Justice did proclaim August 9th as Imagination Library Day in West Virginia. We had over 1,400 guests who attended the private event, which included the fireside chat with President Brad Smith and a musical performance by Dolly. Next slide, please. So I wanted to share with you just some of our marketing materials for the event in case you're looking for ideas for your state. Here you'll see a copy of the electronic invitation that went out, as well as that little card that I just talked about that had the QR code and our contact information. Next slide, please. And then on this slide, it's small, but if you're interested in receiving larger copies of this, just feel free to reach out and I can email them to you. But this is a copy of our sponsorship form and our different sponsorship levels and what was included with each. Next slide, please. And I had to include some photos from the event. This is our college president, Brad Smith, with Dolly, and then Dolly with the proclamation. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to share some fundraising tips for success with you. A lot of people fear fundraising, and it is hard because people don't necessarily want to ask others for money. But the number one reason that people don't give is because they aren't asked. So if you're planning a fundraiser, start by creating a team of trusted individuals to help you along the way. Our Dolly event was definitely a team effort, and it would not have been possible without each and every individual on that team. And it included members from the June Harless Center, from the Department of Education, and then, of course, we worked closely with the Dollywood Foundation. There are a lot of resources available on the web. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. So here are just a couple of tips for success. Next slide, please. Some potential partners if you're looking to implement a statewide program. I won't go through this whole list, but I just wanted to share these with you. You could reach out to your after-school providers, chambers of commerce, community colleges, daycares, pediatricians, hospitals. We do have several hospitals that include registering for the program as part of the birthing process. So they send those to us. Gosh, I get several of those every week. So that's a wonderful resource. Public libraries, the United Way, and other civic groups. Next slide, please. Here are just the resources that were used for today's presentation. And then lastly, you'll have our contact information.
Great. Thank you so much, Alicia. That was a fantastic sharing of how this program was really brought together. At this point, we do have time, quite a bit of time actually for QA, and there were several questions that were coming up, and I have some as well. So I would like to invite our panelists to bring their cameras up and unmute themselves as we go through some of the questions that came up. One of the first questions that I noticed, and I see Brittany is responding. So Brittany, feel free to unmute as well. There was a question about, is the Department of Education the state sponsor and Julius Harless Center the state program partner? How does that infrastructure work in terms of the major partner pieces that are brought together? I think that's probably a Kelly question, but I feel like maybe Brittany, you had some things that you were typing up as well.
Yeah, I had just shared that the June Harless Center is the fundraising arm for the program. So we are how the program is sustained, as well as each of the 55 counties. So the cost for the program is divided amongst the June Harless Center and then the contact or the partner in each of the 55 counties.
Great, thank you. Kelly, do you have anything to add?
No, I think our partnership with that part of it, we're not in the funding part of it, but we collaborate with them as part of the campaign for school readiness. That's a big piece of our school readiness. We also have the platform to be able to push these out on those listservs, to share it on social media and to get it out to the counties and the districts as needed.
Great, thank you. I see another question has just popped up in the chat as well around California and initiating a program like that. And I see, Alicia, you've got it going there. Thank you. Linda, if you have any additional questions or follow up, feel free to place that in the chat. Also, I'm going to just take a peek at the QA box. It looks like we do have a question from Brittany. Are Imagination Library books available in languages other than English and Spanish? Can you talk a little bit about any other multilingual books that are available?
Yeah, at this point, the books are offered in English and some titles in Spanish in the United States. As far as other countries that participate in the program, I can't speak to that, but I'm sure they are available in other languages outside of the United States. However, here it is English and Spanish.
Great, thanks, Brittany. Something also that had come up in a previous question in the chat was to describe a little bit about the local 501c3 affiliates or those nonprofit partners that may be associated with the infrastructure of your program. Does that vary by county, or is there just one affiliate of a nonprofit partner in each county? What does that look like in terms of having multiple affiliates? That really speaks to the partnership management question.
So like I said, West Virginia is unique, but if a state was going statewide, they would have one nonprofit that the program would run through in that state. And then they would just have community partners that they would work with. And more information is available on imaginationlibrary.com if you want to learn more about that. But West Virginia is unique in that we are housed, the June Harless Center serves as the fundraising arm, but then we work with our 55 counties to fund the program.
Fantastic. Thank you. Can you share a little bit about your community participation per region? Since this is a statewide effort, I think this question is really getting at, are you seeing a lot of activity regionally or in the state overall? Like, what does that look like in terms of engagement with the program?
I can share that we have about 52% of eligible children enrolled in the state.
Wow.
And several of our communities are very active in spreading awareness of the program. I don't know if anybody else wants to elaborate on that.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brittany.
Go ahead, Brittany.
I was just going to say, as individual counties in each of those 55 areas, we average about 50%. There's some counties, of course, that have higher participation, some a little bit lower, right. But on average, it's about 50% in each individual county.
Great, thank you. I'm wrapping my own brain around the fact that this is statewide. So as we were kind of thinking about that last question about regional activity and statewide activity, I understand that there is a lot of movement in terms of the partnership management component. And so I'm curious around the things that you have to ensure that those partnerships are managed effectively with such a large set of stakeholders. Like, what kinds of things do you do to pull together that partnership component and manage that?
Okay, I'll start on this one. I think that there's several things that we do that helps this be successful or helps the success of the program, and one of it is definitely communication. Just being consistent with our communication and also building those relationships. And that goes back to our partnership with the LTAC. We have those 6 specialists and now Alicia that have that dedicated time and also those relationships that they build with those individual counties. So it's not just one person here at the department, but we have that capacity built to where we actually cover the state with those specialists, building those relationships and communicating back and forth. I think that is huge here. Also, our relationship, the Department of Education with June Harless and the LTAC has been, just we couldn't do it without each other. So that is huge also. We also have listservs that we share out with, those newsletters that they spoke about, the ladies have spoke about. One of them is for family engagement and one of them is for the partners. Those give the updated numbers and anything new coming up with the program. They have meetings with their counties, at least 2 meetings per year, like a beginning of the year meeting, middle of the year meeting, and then some technical assistant meetings in the spring, and then any kind of as needed meeting with our specialists, with those county leads and county teams. So just being, communication, transparency, and keeping all of the relationships ongoing is key. Yeah.
Yeah, great. I appreciate that. I was going to ask a question about meetings, since I know that is one of those ways to keep that communication flowing. I think this other question too that just popped up in the chat kind of speaks a little bit to the idea of the expansion. And so if we had people that are listening and watching today that were interested in bringing it to their own community, for example, we have a person from South Carolina who is inquiring about that. Like, what would those first steps be if there isn't already a Dolly Parton Imagination Library program to their awareness in that particular state? What are those first initial steps that would need to happen to be able to at least start the conversation or be able to bring it to their own community?
I would recommend that they reach out to a local nonprofit such as the United Way, or maybe even one of their state representatives to say, I'm interested in getting Imagination Library here. What can we do? And then that person can champion it and contact the Dollywood Foundation to get that ball rolling.
Great, thank you. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and ask about the child component of this program, since we know that the why of the program is for children, and just understanding a little bit about the ways that children are signed up. Is the most popular way or most preferred way, I guess that's two different questions, to be signed up by their teacher or by their parents? How do the children actually get the book, and how does that work in terms of the logistics of the process for having children becoming enrolled in the program?
Most commonly, families sign up through an online form that's just provided by the Dollywood Foundation. It's a registration link, and that can be used for any child. So any family, not just families in West Virginia, can use the Dolly Parton Imagination Library website to check and see if the program is available in their area. And then if it is, then it will allow them to go ahead and register and sign up for the program. We also here in West Virginia receive a large amount of paper enrollment forms. We also do have a paper registration form that families can fill out. And we rely really heavily on our partners in each of the 55 counties to gather those registration forms. So our local libraries, hospitals, healthcare centers, schools, sometimes daycare providers will have families fill out the paper registration form, and then they mail them to us here at the June Harless Center, and we input those registrations by hand. But as far as
it's a lot of work, Brittany.
Yeah, as far as the structure, the Dollywood Foundation provides all of the management piece of that. So once children are registered for the program, their information is housed in a secure book order system, and that's how we use that system to kind of manage their information. And the Dollywood Foundation handles distribution of the books. We don't deal with distribution in any way. So all books are sent through a warehouse in Tennessee, and all of that goes through that book order system that's provided by the Dollywood Foundation. So our job, mainly in the child registration process, is just to spread awareness and get families to register.
Yeah,
and then,
that's awesome.
To keep their information up to date. If they need to update a phone number or an address or change a name, something like that, they'll contact us and we can do that for them.
Perfect. I have another question that's really related to, I think, something that you were just speaking about in terms of the family engagement component. You're mentioning that the books, that distribution, the mailing out isn't done by your office. Do you have a sense of what the books are for that month that's being sent out, or do you have a list that you receive to know exactly what is being sent out? And then how does that connect with the newsletter? I was really impressed by your description of that family engagement component, that you're sending that out as well to families. So can you share a little bit about how those pieces align?
Yeah, so the Dollywood Foundation, as I mentioned, has a committee of early childhood literacy specialists. And so they're the Blue Ribbon Book Club committee. Once they meet and they have approved those titles for the following year, they share them out with us as the partner here in West Virginia. And so we have what they call a book grid, or a list of all the titles that will be sent for that year. Of course, they're subject to change. Dependent upon book availability, a title could become very popular that year, and they may have to substitute a book or two out occasionally. But for the most part, at the beginning of the year, those books are set. So we do know a little bit ahead of time what they're going to be, which is really helpful. And that information can also be found on the Dolly Parton's Imagination Library website. Anyone can go and see what the books are going to be for each of the 6 age groups.
That's fantastic. There are some funding questions that we have that popped up in the chat. So I feel, Alicia, like these might be fielded by you. Are there individual county affiliates responsible for half of the monthly bill from Dolly Parton Imagination Library when the state is funding the other half, who's responsible for that billing component? So a technical question, so I feel like it might be under your hat for implementation.
So the June Harless Center funds 50% of every county's invoice monthly, and then the counties may use their grant funds to cover their 50%. So ideally it's a 50-50 split. And then our office processes the invoices. So I send those invoices out each month to all 55 counties, and then they send the money directly to the Dollywood Foundation.
Great. Two more. I think Beth's question, I think maybe you just answered it. Does your state funding cover 50 or 100% of the cost? So I feel like you just answered that. And then a direct question around grant funding, like what types of grants are you utilizing to be able to cover some of those costs?
So I can pipe in here on this one. I know our staff has worked with individual counties to look at grants, even within their location, that would support the program. We've had local groups fund for that particular area, and that's something that we really see as an asset, is to look at the local community and see how they can fund their programs there locally. That was one reason why Alicia was brought on as a program developer. That was a new position that we decided that really needed to happen because of the expansion. It was going to take more work. Alicia mentioned how the funding works. We say that generically because every county looks a little bit different. So that's generally like best of world case, how things would work. But at every level, where there are gaps, that's where our funding tries to fill those gaps. And it could be through individual donors, it could be through corporate donations, like Alicia mentioned. It could be through private foundations that want to support that work in their local community. So grants are very important to this process as well.
Thank you, Tara Beth. That sparked something for me in my mind in terms of participation and partnerships with groups like United Way. We know that United Way has a national footprint, and so there might be some folks listening that would be affiliated with United Way in their community, and they both cover like state, larger communities and smaller communities. So can you talk a little bit, if you have had participation from local United Ways in any of your counties in West Virginia?
I can say that we do have one county that is funded by the United Way, and they have been wonderful to work with.
Great, thank you. And okay, let's shift gears a bit about the partnerships. Still stay on partnerships, but how does that work with early childhood or daycare classrooms and schools where teachers are aligning those lessons and experiences with the book that students are reading at home? So Brittany was talking a little bit about how you have in mind the books that would be coming out. Have you seen that happen and translate into the classroom setting where the teachers are also knowing which books are coming in and if it has come through in any of the curriculum that they share, and so that there is a common linkage between classroom, children receiving the book in the home, and then those lessons coming together? Can you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, so we actually have, we encourage that our childcare providers and educators sign up for that partner newsletter, because as Alicia mentioned, that will also give them activities, or also give them access to those book activity sheets. So we encourage them to take those book activities that we create and use them in the classroom with families. We also encourage that they seek out opportunities other opportunities that we may offer through the June Harless Center. We also use, we often use Imagination Library books for other opportunities, like statewide read alouds or statewide events where we will create other sorts of activities or planning for events that they could host on their own, where they kind of don't have to worry about the legwork. We'll take care of all of that for them. And then we just provide it to them and they can implement it in their individual counties. And so we create a lot of partnerships in that way by kind of doing the research and finding the activities and planning for events and then providing that information to them. And they just have to simply host the event in their local community or in their classroom.
That's fantastic. It really speaks to the idea of that partnership component being incredibly important. And I really appreciate how you're describing just the seamlessness of that and that continuous communication component with ensuring that that the teachers are a piece of that and that families are a part of that as well. There is a question that came up in the QA that also kind of speaks a little bit to that about the role of the Department of Education and also with the June Harless Center. Can you tell us more about the role of the state and how does that funding flow with the state? The June Harless Center handles all registration and paying of the invoices. So can you share a little bit, that goes to funding as well, but how are those roles clearly defined in terms of the funding that goes from the Department of Education and then where June Harless Center comes in? That could be fielded by any of you. I feel like that's a pretty big question.
Okay, I'll take a stab at this one.
Okay, thank you.
Well, with the funding part of it, with Imagination Library, there's not necessarily a state funding for Imagination Library. What we have with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, the counties do get an allocation of funds. Now, each individual county may use some of their funding to use for Imagination Library, but that's different for every county, and that doesn't always happen, and some may and some may not. But with funding, that's all that the state, we really don't have anything to do with the funding part or raising money for Imagination Library. That's not what the state does. Ours is more of a partnership for awareness and getting all of this pushed out with listservs and getting them in touch with schools and districts and into the 55 counties, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then June Harless, and especially Alicia, is the one that takes care of the funding part of the Imagination Library.
Great, thank you. There is a follow-up to this question about the expansion of it statewide and the role that the Department of Education plays in that. The person is writing, I'm hoping to know more about taking it statewide. So the expansion of that obviously comes at a cost of state dollars. So we are already implementing this in some counties. How were legislators convinced to dedicate state funds so this could go statewide? So that's a little bit about like a policy question and advocacy. So what were those pieces that had to be in place in order to make the expansion statewide?
So just to reiterate what Kelly said, it's not written into legislation here in West Virginia. So that's not a part of our structure here in West Virginia. We really rely on the department to help us spread awareness because they have such a great reach and work so diligently to promote school readiness. We're just fortunate that we have their support in being able to grow the program by spreading that awareness, that the program is available. And then they kind of just refer people to us.
That's awesome. And I took note too that in the video that we shared, it is your state governor that is appearing in that, correct? Awesome. Okay. So just a question about supporting children with the books. What is done to encourage children at risk of challenges with literacy to enroll? So let's say that you have children who may not be in the same place as other children in terms of their reading or skill ability. So how do you encourage those children at risk with enrolling in the program? What does that enrollment component look like?
We work a lot with our community partners to reach out to local food banks, to the foster care system, local fire departments, and places like that to get children registered for the program. So a lot of those organizations are reaching those at-risk children that haven't been reached through the school system or their local libraries and places like that. So by including registration forms in food packets that families pick up from food banks, or with the fire department, if a child is entering foster care, a lot of our communities will provide like a little backpack with, necessary supplies like a toothbrush and a blanket, and also a registration form because their foster families are more than welcome to sign them up for the program. So by doing things like that and connecting with those partners, we help to get those families or those children who may not otherwise have an opportunity to registered for the program.
That's great. And I took note too, as Alicia was sharing things out, that I saw that you go to a lot of community events, and that kind of speaks to what you just said, Brittany. Can you share a little bit about the community engagement opportunities that you've attended? I feel like many of us on the call that might be listening, and myself included, have gone to like a resource fair, and you've had to provide capacity to the table. So what do you suggest as strategies to bring people to the table to come and check out what it is that you're offering, and like what are those successful things that you've had to get people to actually sign up? What can you recommend?
So having an attractive table display is helpful. We have a life-size Dolly cutout that everyone
Oh my
loves.
gosh, that's awesome.
So we put up Dolly and people will stop by and take selfies. And it gives us an opportunity to share the benefits of Imagination Library. And so we've had success in getting children enrolled right there at the table. Sometimes they might take registration forms with them. We've given out registration forms just so people can make copies and share them in their communities. So really, it's just about having, an attractive table display and being available to answer questions.
That's
Brittany,
fabulous.
do you have anything you want to add to that?
I was hoping you would share, but I figured you wouldn't. Alicia also recently dressed as Dolly at an event.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
So that was a really great way to attract people to visit our table and learn about the program.
It was in my notes, but I decided not to share that.
That's
also,
great.
I will add to just sharing like the family impact and family success stories. That's always a really great way to grab people's attention. What we're doing is for the children of our state, and here in West Virginia, everyone really supports that. We want to promote school readiness and early literacy, and so we get to hear a lot from the families directly. Alicia and I do, because we work with them. And so getting to share those stories and pictures with their permission is a really great way to get people invested in supporting the program also.
I love that. And that was actually going to be one of my questions too. Like, can you, this question is actually open for anybody, since I know that all of you have some teaching experience as well, but can you share like maybe an example of something that sticks in your mind or sticks in your heart in terms of the family impact? Like, is there a story that really stays with you that you've heard of someone being positively impacted by this program, outside of Jess, who we know is fantastic and had that video to share? But are there any other family stories that come immediately to mind that you can talk a little bit about and share about how this program has really impacted them? I'll let you think about it, because I know that question just kind of came up out of nowhere.
I receive a lot of the family stories, so I feel like I could share endlessly about all the wonderful things that families have to share. One of the things that we ask through our newsletter is for families to share their story. And so every month on the newsletter, there's just a little section that says, like, please don't forget to send us your photos or your stories and tell us how the program is helping your family. And so in our state specifically, one of the things that we hear most is just how happy our families are to have the chance to build a home library for their family, because they may have otherwise not have had access to books. But we also hear a lot just how, and I mentioned this briefly earlier, just how happy families are to see different characters and different diverse family situations represented. I recently had a story from a family whose daughter was just over the moon because the little girl in the book looked like her, and she's not used to seeing little girls in books who look like her. And so they shared a very heartfelt story about how this book had really just touched them and their family, and made a real difference for their daughter, and that she was even, asking like, Mommy, are there other books with like little girls that look like me? Which sent them out on this adventure to, find other titles and books that they could read. And so it's stories like that that always, stick with me. So I'm
Oh
sure.
my gosh, I love that. Alicia, do you have any that come to your mind, or Kelly, Tara Beth? Any other stories? I love these heartwarming stories.
I don't have a personal story, but I get to read all of these really neat stories. Brittany and Alicia send me, we do Imagination Library Thursday on our social media here at West Virginia Department of Ed. And so
cool.
they send me these to send out to our social media requests. And so I get to see, I think there's one a month. They do something, there's usually 4 or 5 a month. And out of those, there's kind of a rotation. And one of them is always a share out from families. So there's always some cute ones on there. And I can't necessarily remember the story, but the pictures are what tug at my heart. When you see,
of course,
when you see the kid at the or at the mailbox and they're excited, or sitting on their mom's lap, or in a tent with a flashlight, like it's really heartwarming to see those. And those are real stories from West Virginia.
Yeah.
So we push those out on Thursdays. If you all follow West Virginia Department of Education, you'll get to see some of those stories from West Virginia families. They're really
That's awesome. Yeah. I can include your social media information in our follow-up resources, so folks are wanting to see that. I think that would be fantastic. Photos are extremely powerful. I will add that. Yeah. Alicia, I saw you were unmuting. Did you have a story that really sticks in your mind and in your heart?
No, I just love when we're set up in a community and the kids like walk by and they say, "Oh, there's Dolly. I get Dolly books," and they're just so excited that to see Dolly and to get their books.
Right. Yeah, cool. This is a technical question around like returned or undeliverable books. What happens to that source if a family moves or if something happens where the book doesn't reach the family for whatever reason? How are those handled?
So unfortunately, books are not able to be forwarded through the United States Postal Service. And so sometimes we do run into situations where books are not able to be delivered. And most often they are held at the local post office. And we always encourage families to try to pick them up there, to contact their local postmaster or the post office and see if they can intercept the book if they have moved. And so that is one thing, is that if a family is moving, it takes a little bit of time to update their address and get that switched over for them. And so sometimes there can be a gap, and we always encourage families to stop by their old post office and try to locate that book until the books are delivered to their new address.
Great, thank you. Let's talk a bit about project management in the remaining time that we have, and I'll see too if there are any open questions that we might have missed in the QA. As far as project management goes, this is a question for everybody, because you each have different perspectives in terms of where you are interacting with this program. What are some of the challenges that you might have experienced with the expansion to statewide? As I remember Tara Beth explaining the beginnings of this program, and Kelly, you explaining the beginnings of this program, there were a lot of steps that had to happen before it could be expanded to embrace all of the counties. So can you share a little bit, each from your various perspectives and the various hats that you're wearing, challenges that you experienced with bringing this program to a statewide level, and how you worked through those challenges? What did that look like? So we'll start, this is for everybody. So we'll start with Kelly, and then I'll call on folks for this one.
Well, it's a little different with me, probably than with Brittany and Alicia. I think that maybe probably the challenges might just be finding those local partners with each individual county. And that's not my role, but I know that that's a challenge for our team and our counties in the state. So, even though, and there's turnover, even though that you might have someone that's interested one year, they may not be interested the next year. So that's always a challenge. It's always going to ebb and flow, and it's always going to, it's forever changing. So it's not like you finally get to a certain level and you're there, like the work is always there. So I think that's just a challenge that you have to be ready for.
Great. Tara Beth, what are you thinking in terms of a challenge that you might have experienced or seen your staff experience with making this statewide, and then how did they work through that?
Yeah, so, and we're a little bit different too, in that we picked up the ball at a certain point of this timeline. But when you look at the whole journey of Imagination Library in West Virginia, you can see that there's peaks and valleys, like Kelly said, sometimes there's funding challenges, sometimes there's an influx of funding. And so I think my biggest advice is to really try to build that shared responsibility when trying to launch something to scale like this. We do have a great partnership with the West Virginia Department of Education. The Dollywood Foundation is so supportive of our work. And we have a lot of people. Well, first of all, you have Dolly in your corner. So if you have Dolly in your corner, are positive from the get-go. She's so recognizable, and she's also known for her heart and the way that she gives back to community. So you have her to lead with when trying to build some of this excitement and responsibility around it. So you can't do it alone. I think that is a big takeaway. The other thing I would say is just keep swimming. Like things, like we said, things come and go. Funding sources do come and go, but if you stick with the mission, you stick with the stories, you stick with how this is impacting lives and children, and you persevere, you will find another funding source. You will pick up more folks that are interested in funding this. I think about West Virginia. Somebody mentioned a minute ago, this might look a lot different than a bigger state. We do have a smaller population. We might be looking at a county that has a chicken factory within their county that could help us fund some of this if we get them interested. We might be looking at, a hospital in another county that would want to help us do some of the funding. So it's really, we are lucky in a lot of ways that we are a small state, and we do have really great relationships across the state. And so I would just say those two things. Make sure that you're not trying to do this alone. It would be a heavy lift, and that you just keep swimming.
That's great advice. Thank you, Tara Beth. I appreciate too that concept of perseverance. And it seems that all of you as panelists and your colleagues that you work with throughout the state are very centered on the why of this program. And that to me seems to be a key element too, is that you all know why you want to bring this to every child in the county. So I appreciate that perspective. Brittany, what are you thinking about challenges? Any other different challenges that you might have experienced in bringing this to a statewide expansion, and how did you work through it?
I work most closely with the families and family involvement. And so I would just say, one of the challenges, and Tara Beth kind of spoke to this, is we do have a relatively small team here, and we're centrally located for the most part in our state. And so getting to all of our 55 counties, although we all are a small state, it takes quite a bit of time to travel to some other areas in West Virginia. And so just coming together to have the manpower and the expertise and the capacity to work with partners in each of the 55 counties and to reach the families in each of those counties, of course, was and has been, and sometimes still continues to be, a challenge. But we're learning every day with all of the partners here on this call how to work through that and how to reach the families more. Also, as Tara Beth said, we're so thankful for the reach of the Department of Education and them helping to build awareness and spread awareness of the program and supporting this initiative, because without their help, we wouldn't have nearly as many families registered. And so by using their social media outlets and pages, they're able to not only help us register children, but to spread awareness of things that families need to know. Like if they're moving, they need to update their address with us 10 to 12 weeks in advance and things like that. And so I think that was a challenge at first, but we're learning how to overcome it, and it's getting better every day. So
That's great. And Alicia, you're not off the hook. I'm going to hold. There is a question that came up that really kind of goes in line with what you just said, Brittany. So I'm going to get to your challenge in a minute, Alicia. But I do want to ask that local partnership component. How do you vet that, knowing that, you know, you do have to travel across the state and there are so many different partners that are being a part of this program? How do you vet your local partnerships to assure that common value for the children is there?
One partner that we haven't mentioned that I want to make sure we mention and give credit to is our local school systems.
Yes.
We really rely on them so heavily to help promote this program, and they are our partner in most of the 55 counties. And so because we're not there, they know who the organizations or the individual donors or funders are in their county that may support the program. They know what their missions are, and if they align with our mission to promote school readiness and early childhood literacy. And so we really do rely on them to kind of go through that vetting process and send us people who may be interested in supporting the program or letting us know how to get in contact with them. That's a really important piece of that vetting process.
Yeah, thank you. All right, you've had extra time now, Alicia, to think about your challenge. What was something that came to mind for you as a challenge that was something that you had to kind of work through, and how did you work through it? What did that look like?
Well, I am new to the team. I've been on board for about 4 months, but I was hired on June 13th and Dolly was coming on August 9th. And they said, okay, Alicia, welcome and go out and raise money. So here you go. So that was a little bit challenging for me, but I just sat down and pulled together some potential donors. I got some recommendations from my team members, typed up an email and a letter and a little sponsorship package, and just went out and started asking folks if they were interested. And I find that if you mention Dolly and kids and books, you know, that's something people are passionate about and that they believe in. So thankfully, you know, it all worked out and it you know, came together. But, you know, I do expect to face some additional challenges with funding, but it's all about, you know, just building those partnerships and working as a team to continue to promote the program.
Yeah, fantastic. Folks might have seen a poll that just popped up. We would really appreciate your input. That poll just helps us to refine our content as we move forward with fabulous stories like this one that you heard today. So please do complete the poll. And I just have one final question for all panelists, and then we'll close today. My final question is, what's next? You're statewide at this point. Where do you see the program expanding more, or like what's next for this program? Is it to stay the course, or do you see other elements that might be coming up for 2023? And this is a question for everybody. So we'll start with Brittany, and then I'm going to call on folks on this one.
Well, as Alicia mentioned earlier in the webinar, we are so excited that our governor has declared August 9th as Dolly Parton's Imagination Library Day in West Virginia. And so that's a big next step for us. Part of my role in that is I hope to work to engage families even further than we already have, especially around that day, and use that day to build awareness of the program and build awareness of the other opportunities we have for families to participate in and expanding upon what they can do with the books at home once they receive them.
Fantastic. Kelly, Tara Beth, what do you think? What's next?
I think next steps for us, maybe as a team, even individually, but also as a team, you know, I think one of the girls mentioned we're at 52% of our children 0 to 5 that are eligible. There's about 52% that are registered for the program. You know, I just want to keep the work, keep making, doing awareness for the program, getting the information out there, using our schools and our counties to get in touch with all of our parents, And I would like to see, the growth of this to one day be 100% of the kids that are eligible in West Virginia be receiving the books from Dolly Parton Imagination Library.
That's beautiful. Tara Beth, anything to add to that for what's next from your perspective?
Well, I think for me, it's just sustainability. It's just like Kelly said, we have 52%. We have room for growth. 52% is great, but we do have this expansion and the room for growing the program. And so sustainability is going to be really important. Making sure, people retire, people move on, people move out of the state. And so, as new folks come in and join us, we want to make sure they understand about this program and how it impacts our children. I think it's in Tennessee. They consider this, Imagination Library as like a birthright. And we want that to be the same thing here in West Virginia. Children are born into our state, and we want to make sure that they have the resources, a home library that is going to be almost like a birthright for them. And we know that that's going to improve literacy rates in our state. And so just focusing on that and focusing on our sustainability.
Fantastic. Alicia, last words. What's next?
Continuing to fundraise and build relationships with folks and just spread awareness about the program and how important it is to the kids in West Virginia.
Perfect. This has been a fantastic time listening to your story. I really appreciate all of the energy around this program. And so I just want to appreciate also those of you out there who've been viewing and listening to us today. We will be sending out full slat of resources for you, and also want to mention some of our GLR Learning Tuesday webinars that are coming up. There is one this afternoon around engaging every student and building that community connection. So please do tune in this afternoon for your double header. And with that, we will close today. And I want to wish everybody a great afternoon. Thank you so much.